I cannot believe that we're already in the back half of 2024.
Are you kidding me?
But here we are. Before you know it, the calendar will be turning again, and that means we are already getting ready for 2025 conferences, and one that I'm personally very excited to attend again is the Insights EDU conference. If you care at all about growing enrollment and building a student-centered higher ed experience, you really should be at this conference. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available. Visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register. That's visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and today we are extremely excited to announce our paid subscription service. By subscribing today, you will get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content, and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you in another episode. As we we're in a very recognizable time period for those of you that follow the traditional higher education cycle. And when I say traditional higher education, I mean you start in the fall, then you might have a second fall start, then winter comes, and then spring comes, and then you have another spring start, so on and so on and so on. The agrarian calendar, as it were, which somehow we all in higher education follow like sheep to the wolf. But not everybody runs on the same type of calendar. There are institutions out there that are looking at the modern learner saying, how do I serve this student? Do I make them wait 2 to 3 months before they start school? Well, if I do that, chances are they're going to go somewhere else or not start school at all, or something else happens, life gets in the way. So when you have a student who's ready to start school, the question is, can you flex your model to be there when the student needs you to be there? And that's a question I think the entirety of higher education has to ask itself. But particularly for any institution serving a modern learner, we'll call this an adult learner, a student who has responsibilities outside of going to class and waking up and going to class and waking up. You have to be flexible with your business model. Now, one person I know who's super flexible is my guest co-host, Douglas Carlson, because the last time Douglas and I saw each other in person, we were at the Career Education Conference. I can't ever get it right. Career Education.
CQ, yep.
CQ, let's just say that. Conference in, I don't remember where we were, Douglas. Where were we?
Indianapolis, yeah.
Indianapolis. And we interviewed like 25 people in and around career education and really got a good holistic view on what's happening in the industry. And you just couldn't get enough, Douglas. You're back.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure.
Douglas Carlson, everyone. We're going to hope that he doesn't make the same type of mistakes he made during those other episodes. But you never know with Douglas.
I'm a quick learner.
Quick learner. Quick trigger. We don't know. Well, we're going to find out today as we bring our guest to the microphone here. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the one and only Jerome Grant. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Universal Technical Institute, UTI. Jerome, welcome to An Up, Mike. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, you like that whole buildup I was giving.
I did, and I don't get applause all that often, so it's great to hear.
So that concludes this episode of the EdUp Experience, since we're 2 out of 2. No,
it could end right here.
We want to do that. Well, level set for us. But first, let me say, for anybody listening, how big of a believer I am in career education. Personally, selfishly, I worked in the industry for 15 years. I saw how hard people work to serve students from that were coming to these career colleges. Then I saw there's so much bias sometimes against career colleges. It's literally ugly. And then you go, wait, COVID's here. Essential workers. We need somebody to turn on the lights. All of a sudden, all these career college students were held high, and then it cycles and cycles again. Jerome, there's so much going on, and I want your opinions on all of that. But tell us a little bit about UTI first. Where are you located? Who do you serve? How do you serve them?
Sure. So, Universal Technical Institute actually operates two groups of schools. We have UTI, as you've said it, which is 16 campuses around the country: Florida, Texas, California, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Chicagoland, and those focus on transportation, skill trades, and energy. Started 60 years ago here in Phoenix as a auto tech training center, and then spread around the country and diversified the portfolio. We've got about 16,000 students on those 16 campuses around the country. And then 2 years ago, we acquired Concord Career Colleges, which is 17 schools around the country that are focused in the healthcare space. And Concord focuses in dental and what we refer to as allied health, which is just about everyone that surrounds the doctor, except for nursing. We aren't that strong in nursing. That's something we're working on right now. And they've got about 10,000 students on those 17,000 campuses. What draws together, sometimes people say, what, you're in tech trades and you're in healthcare, what's the story there? What draws together the two schools is a very simple thing, which is the supply and demand curve for these types of workers, both healthcare and in the tech trades, is wildly out of whack. And we'll only focus in areas where that supply and demand curve's wildly out of whack. And we've been working over the last 5 or 6 years to accelerate growth to try to solve the problem.
Amazing.
So you're basically sitting somewhere around 30 plus campuses and 30 plus thousand students, right?
Yep, we're at 30 campuses and right around 30,000 students and growing.
Yeah, I mean, so that's incredible, first of all. And an acquisition, let's start there, is not an easy thing to do. For anybody there actually are not that many people in higher education that have ever been through a merger or an acquisition. It is discussed so much. I mean, we read so much about it. It's like, I could talk about mergers and acquisitions, but unless you've gone through one, you really don't know the guts of it. Can you talk a little bit about that process? How did it go? How have you integrated them culturally, operationally? How does it look?
So we've actually done two in the last 5 years. Part of our first phase of what we call our North Star growth and diversification plan was these two acquisitions. The first one was MIAT College of Technology, which we're two campuses, about 1,000 students in Michigan and in Texas. And the reason we acquired MIAT was it offered 6 or 7 programs that the UTI tech trades and automotive campuses didn't serve. And we wanted to broaden the portfolio on those campuses to appeal to more 18 to 24-year-olds, which is that audience, and to try to solve some more problems in that space. So that acquisition was more of an integration into the UTI model. We're renaming the campuses UTI and integrating their programs into it. I will tell you, and then the second acquisition was Concord just 2 years ago, which was more of what we refer to as a bolt-on. We run it as a separate division, separate president, separate campuses, et cetera. But the interesting thing is, the Department of Education looks at these acquisitions the same way. Whether it's 2 campuses and $25 million or 17 campuses and $200 million, the paperwork's the same, the timeline's the same, the scrutiny's the same, the oversight's the same, that every piece of the puzzle is exactly the same. Because as many of your listeners know, we do operate in a highly regulated environment, and those processes are put in place to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so it takes about 1.5 years. So in this industry, there's no such thing as a roll-up.
Yikes!
I couldn't look at 5 different proprietary schools and say, let's group them all together and acquire them. You have to do them one at a time. It takes about 1.5 years each. and to move through that process. And so we've completed the process with MIAT and Concord. And as I've been saying on our earnings call, because we are publicly traded, we're looking at more in the areas of healthcare that we may be able to bring in and focus in some areas like nursing. So,
Douglas.
Yeah, and obviously this is an education-focused podcast, but I'd certainly be remiss if I didn't kind of go back to your comment. So, over the past 12 months, your stock has nearly doubled, and you have a solid buy rating from Barron's. Clearly, the market likes what you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're communicating there, what you're thinking about, what impact this has then ultimately for education?
yeah, well, we're playing in an arena that has this huge supply and demand issue, right? And our team is doing a great job of thinking about organically where we put new campuses, how we start new programs, and what we acquire. And we've more than doubled the size of the company and raised the profit profile 5x in since 2018. And so, that's the response of the market as we move forward. If you just do the math and on the multiples that are out in the market, that's what you see in terms of where it is. But I think the reason the market's responding so well to it is that, frankly, we're doing it quite well, which is our outcomes are staying high. We graduate between 65 and 75% of our students, which, if you know the community college ranks, you understand it's impressive. Over 80% of our students find jobs in market within 1 year, and frankly, those that don't probably weren't looking for them, because
Sure.
there are so many jobs out there in the market, and some people actually take our programs actually not intending to go into that field, but to get the knowledge base and the skill that they were there. And I said, so the outcomes, I think the growth that we've seen and the continued growth we're projecting. And then the last thing would be our industry affiliations set us apart.
Yeah.
A lot of people in this space don't spend as much time and effort really thinking about their connection points to both the manufacturing community, like 34 OEM partners on the automotive and diesel side, and motorcycle and marine, or whether it's the 13,000 employment partners that we have that that sign agreements to get access to our graduates. And so I think the way we've organized both the progression of the education, the industry alignment, the outcomes, and then how employers access our students is a real solid story. And I think the market's reacting well to that.
True.
And I want to make sure I got that stat correct because it sounds huge. You say you have 13,000 employment partners?
Yeah, we have about 7,000 on the healthcare side and 6,000 on the transportation, trades, and energy. And this is one of the things we've done over the last 5 years. When there's such a huge supply and demand problem out there, what you really want to do is you really want to form, codified relationships with the employment partners.
Sure.
And the reason is, frankly, they're really desperate. And so, anybody who gets access to a UTI graduate has signed what's called a trip agreement with us, which tells them exactly what they're going to pay, how much their sign-on is going to be, how much their tuition or loan reimbursement will be. And frankly, we meter access to our graduates by who have the best deals, because our job is to get the best outcome for our graduates. And so that's the way we've been able to sort of organize and set up the fact that there's these 6,000 employers on the 16 campuses and about 7,000 employers on the healthcare side.
That's incredible. Well, and you're really truly fulfilling the promise of education that leads to your workforce ready jobs. Like that is what you do. And not only that, you have the folks that want them at the end of the day.
Yeah, and to the point that Joe made at the beginning is that I think the way we go about delivering education and the cadence in which we start courses and the flexibility we give students to be able to engage with us towards that education is really a value. So, for instance, we start classes every 3 weeks on the UTI side. Let's just look at auto. It takes 51 weeks. At a community college, you'd be going for 2 years.
Yep.
It takes 51 weeks. You're online about 3 hours a day, and you're on ground about 3 hours a day in the labs. And we have, on some of our campuses, we have 4 different swim lanes each day that you could engage in. And so for the adult learner who's thinking about retooling, you can do 3 hours in the morning, mid-morning, afternoon, evening, later in the evening on our Dallas campus along those lines, which means you can keep your job that you have right now, and you can do the online work whenever you want, and you're really only in our building for 3 hours a day to do the lab work and assessments, which gave an incredible amount of flexibility. And then the fact that you're only in school for 51 weeks or 36 weeks for a welder or things along those lines gives you a direct path to those jobs quicker than traditional education. And I think that's one of the things that people are realizing right now, which is, ROI just isn't necessarily just about how much money I'm going to make in my lifetime. It's about also what's my investment and how quickly can I get out into the market? And that's one of the things we provide people.
Let me jump in, Douglas, real fast on this. I love everything you just said. And, today, when this episode comes out, it'll probably be about 3 weeks later than today. But there was an article in Forbes, I think it was Forbes, and it says Gen Z is looking at blue-collar jobs. It's where Gen Z is trending towards the blue-collar jobs. And it makes a lot of sense. It's where there's a lot of money out there, right? There's a supply problem, so the salaries and earnings keep going up and up and up. But what you talked about starting every 3 weeks speaks to a bigger advantage maybe that a career college has, and it's something that I remember from my time. And there's so much talk around student first. There's not an institution. It's like back in the old days when you would say we change lives. And then every institution would say we change lives. And eventually you go, well, how do we do it? We need to define the how. We can't just say that we change lives. It's the same thing today. Everybody says we're student first, student first, student first. But what does that actually mean? And what I love about a career college is truly from my experience and what you just described, you're saying I have a student that cannot go at this time. And they can only go at this time. We need to take our business model and we need to make it work at this time. We're not going to say to the student, if you don't come at this time, then I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to come to UTI. Maybe this is going to work for you, like a lot of other institutions do. Now, they really don't mold. There's so many institutions out there that say, but they don't really mold their business model around the student. You're saying you've really molded it to give every student an opportunity to experience the education. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly it. Is that, speed to market, meaning when I can get out in the workforce, and being flexible in the workday to when I can engage with the educational experience has opened the door to, it's one of the reasons why we're growing so fast, is that there are a lot of adult learners out there who have full-time jobs, who say, I got to work from 7 to 3 every day in construction or in a warehouse or driving Uber or something like that. And a traditional education path just doesn't give me the opportunity to predictably do that over a period of time. Whereas we can say, well, you can go from 4 to 7, you can go from 7 till 10. On our campuses, and you just have to find time for the online work and some of the other downtime in your day, and that really has opened a door to growth for us, and then also sort of a new generation of workers who have thought about these paths. But we used to talk to kids in our old model 6-7 years ago was you were in our building for 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for a year. That is not worker friendly, mm-hmm. Right? That's like basically what I did in college, right? And it would have been impossible to have a full-time job during that. And so, using technology, using the online learning platforms, using virtualization in our classrooms, which take them out of having to be in the labs. All of that gives the opportunity for students to have a much more flexible schedule with us.
Excellent.
Douglas, over to you.
Well, I'm looking at all the programs you offer, and I think one of the things that is very unique is you have offerings that are aligned to some really exciting brands. So, if you're a car person, you have GM, Porsche, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz. If you're a truck person, you got Peterbilt, Cummins, going over to Marine, Mercury, Suzuki, Yamaha. Like, you have some really exciting brands there. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to have programs aligned to those brands? And probably the answer is also obvious, but I suspect that that's a huge differential advantage for you, or a way to at least get students excited about what they're doing.
Calling all higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. Hear, hear. The Insights EDU conference is back. This is your chance to level up your marketing and enrollment management strategies, and the EdUp Experience podcast will be there once again. Join us at the Ritz-Carlton, New Orleans, February 12th through 14th for an unforgettable conference. Registration is now open with early bird pricing.
Outstanding.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Are you enjoying the conversation so far? Good, I hope so. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early before anybody else and ad-free, so you don't have to hear my voice during these ads? And did you also know that you could get extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So go to edupexperience.com, that's EDUP experience.com, and become a subscriber today. First, you got to sign up to our free email newsletter, and then you'll find out how to become a subscriber. Again, go to edupexperience.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a big differential for UTI, having the 34, 35 on the UTI side of the equation, manufacturer brands. And, when students, especially young students come in and look at UTI, one of the things they see when they see that whole array of manufacturer specific programs that we run, in addition to core certification, is, wow, I could work anywhere. Right? More often than not, they're kids who say, I want to work on Porsches. Or Harleys or something like that.
Sure.
But as they go through the process, they see whether it's GM or Ford programs. We have several BMW programs. We also run offsite training centers. We run Porsche's training center in Atlanta. We run Mercedes training centers around the country, and we run Volvo training centers around the country, not in our campuses. It just gives them, a plethora of the landscape to be able to say, well, going there gets me ready for what I really want to do, right? Everyone goes through the core ASE certification, which is the same program mixed with a lot of gen eds on a 2-year community college. That certification is there, but the value proposition for UTI is you may stay for 8 more weeks and go through a Ford program. Yeah. And that tracks you right into being able to do warranty work on a Ford campus, or a Ford dealership, which, by the way, you make more money, right?
Sure.
Because that's where the money is, in the warranty work, right? And you don't have to wait and get trained for 3 years on the shop floor to get up to that mechanic level. And so, whether it is Harley Davidson or Mercury, or Lincoln Electric and welding, or any of the manufacturer brands, it really does set us aside, and it really is, quite the magnet for the students as they're thinking about what am I really going to do when I become a mechanic or a welder, right, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Money.
And forgive me, I've definitely, asked you a lot more on the automotive welding, et cetera, side of things, motorcycle side, partially because that's, I line up to that world. And I'll have to ask you offline what kind of car guy you are. But I do want to flip to the other side of the house, and certainly don't want to ignore Concord, because it does a really wonderful job. It's a huge part of your business and also a really important part of the segment. Kind of flipping the conversation, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing to work with hospital groups or specialty practices, or how ultimately are you then also linking your healthcare programs with the workforce that needs it so desperately?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is that but first of all, we've been thrilled with Concord since we acquired it. They're outperforming our models. As we're helping them think a little bit more about what's the fullest potential for what they do. They've been responding very, very well, and they're having a great year. But another thing that really was not a focus, what their focus was to fill the seats in their 17 campuses, right? That's what they spent all their time doing. Which we were just talking about UTI. We were also talking about running training centers and working with the manufacturer partners and doing B2B relationships. That wasn't really part of their core culture.
Yeah.
And so when we took over a couple of years, what's one of the things we brought to the table is let's start talking to some of these large scale employers, some of the equipment manufacturers, some of the hospital chains. And a great example of that is actually a partnership we just did launched a couple of weeks ago, which was with Heartland Dental, right?
Fantastic.
Heartland Dental is largest dental service organization in the country, around 1,700 dental offices around the country. You probably wouldn't see their name on them because they tend to be the local names, but they are the largest organization. And one of the things they came to the table with us and said is, listen, we've got a couple thousand openings at any time for dental hygienists, and we can't fill them because there's nowhere near that many being minted on the traditional campuses every year. What can we do? And that's right up the alley of what we've been doing at UTI, because we're like, well, hey, maybe we should build training centers together. And so they're like, we could do that. And
you have a solution for us?
And with our CODA certification, the way we understand the curriculum and all the rest of that, and frankly, their money and reputation, it's a great combination. And so we're building our first training center together in Fort Myers, Florida. They're funding it. They're funding the building of the training center, all the equipment. They're backing the students with scholarships. And until Title IV funding is in place a couple of years from now for them, they'll be providing loans to the students.
Oh, wow.
And in exchange for work agreements on their campuses. And this is a model they'd like to proliferate more widely across the country. And so we provide the curriculum, the students, the certification. We do the recruiting for them, along with them recruiting off of their. And it's a great example of an industry speaking with their need, because the way they can speak with their need is either through money. Sure. Or advertising and equipment and things along those lines, and us bringing to table what we have, which is a real high quality program, and we know how to execute on it. And so this is a groundbreaking thing for the Concord side, but it also sets a pattern. We could do it with Banner Health, we could do it with a number of other institutions, and it opens up a new model for helping solve this huge healthcare problem.
Outstanding.
We love career colleges. I do. And I keep saying that because I really want my audience to hear it, because I think they fill a critical place in American higher education in particular. And as we move forward, and I talked about this at the beginning, I like to connect some of the random thoughts that I have when I soapbox. But, when we had COVID, I feel like the respect level for graduates from career colleges was, I want to say an all-time high, but when many of the career college grads and workers were labeled essential workers, it brought a certain esteem, like we need more essential workers. And I have also seen where the feds have come down. I've been in the industry in the 2011, 12, 13 area, when the regulation was just ridiculous on career colleges. Where are we, in your opinion, on that pendulum, as it were? Do you think the respect level is high for these institutions in the U.S. like UTI? Is it swinging back to where the more regulation is just coming because it's on a cyclical nature with the political landscape? What's your 30,000 foot on the state of the industry, state of the sector?
Well, I think number one, as I said earlier, we are highly regulated, and frankly, over in this last administration, the regulations have not really increased that much. It's more that the Department of Education has said what's different from this administration than the last administration is we're actually going to police them.
Right.
Right. And so, we've been living within the environment of the regulatory environment pre this administration, during this administration. The one thing we have been working over the last 5 years is bolstering our relationships, both on the Department of Ed side, as well as the legislative side, is we host dozens and dozens of Congress people and senators on our campuses, as well as local officials. We have very strong relationships with them to differentiate what we do from what people would consider to be bad actors, whatever that is that we do train essential workers. If, during COVID, you needed your food delivered to you, right? Ambulances needed to stay on the road. Garbage needed to stay on the road. And without these essential workers, it just wasn't going to happen, right?
It's fuzzy math.
Even in the car dealerships, the showrooms may have been closed and things transitioned to online for buying cars, but those service bays were still open through the entire way because you needed to keep the cars on the road so that doctors could get to work, so that nurses could get to work. And we're very proud of participating in that. I think, when you think about the regulatory environment, the focus really has been on making sure the outcomes are there. And one thing in career education that, and specifically in the areas we focus with, is that the outcomes are there. Whether it's whether it's the ROI that students are getting, whether some of the other regulations that are out there, those metrics are something we know about, we manage, but we're not really even close to the tripwires on any of them. And the reason is what you said, which is demand is driving wages. Wages are on the rise. Stability is there for our workers. And we're not dealing with a lot of people who are not finding jobs out there that make good money. And those strong relationships that we have with the employment community and the manufacturing community, as well as the political environments and the legislative environments, all help us navigate through that.
Love it. Douglas?
Yeah, well, also just to point out, one of the interesting things, I think the world is shifting. It used to be sort of a Republican versus Democrat issue, but if you look at CQ, which is the body really for proprietary education, the president is Dr. Jason Altmaier, who is a Democrat, believe it or not. And so I think things have changed demonstrably because of those dynamics. One of the things I'd be curious as well is, and maybe this is too specific, but things like the 80-20 rule. So folks being able to pay cash versus get loans. Sure. How do you think about that? Is it just is it naturally with market forces? You have folks that are able to pay cash or other ways for the programs, or do you have programs set up in a way that you can ultimately help folks and it's not just purely loan based?
Yeah, so one of the only changes to the 80-20 rule in this administration was the VA benefits moving over into federal. Prior to that, we were in the low 60s of where we were, and now we're right around 80. And again, for your listeners, it's a pass fail, and so it's not something we obsess about every day. We don't have a plan that would actually push significantly more military into our system, which could go up against there. Yeah. And then from a cash pay standpoint, we've worked on, and there's a number of programs you do continue to alter your mix to continue the flow of cash pay, whether it's short courses on the healthcare side, large need for phlebotomists and sterile processors in surgical centers, and therefore we've launched phlebotomy and sterile processing short courses that are all cash pay, right? Some of the manufacturer programs are cash pay and things along those lines. They're supported by the manufacturers. And so, one of the things I talked about was the number of tuition reimbursement programs that are out there. And therefore, we're trying to take the risk out of it for students by showing them that even if they are paying cash right now or going on a payment plan, that if they go to work for, the Penske organization or Hendricks or someone like that, they're going to get $300-400 a month to pay their student loans off as long as they work there, and that lowers the barrier to worrying about going on a non-Title IV cash pay or installment program.
And that's what I was wondering. That makes a ton of sense. Just the demand is so there, the manufacturers are helping really support the education.
And that's been a lot of our work over the last five years, which is, probably 5-6 years ago, a lot of both the manufacturers and the employers just sort of sat back and said, "I'll wait to see how good your graduates are, and then I'll take them." And they just can't do that anymore. Their need is acute. One of the things on the UTI side we started across our 16 campuses is an early employment program, and so we, on all of our campuses, we're trying to get students jobs in market the day they start with us, rather than.
That's so nice. That's incredible.
Completely flipping the model.
Yeah. And what it does is, in order to qualify to be an early employer for us, you have to pay at least $15 an hour. You have to have at least $10,000 in tuition repayment at the end. You have to have a mentorship program, and there's some other criteria. And then, by the way, if you steal the student before they graduate, you have to pay the rest of their tuition.
You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
And part of the reason is, in the last generation, we used to encourage students to go to work at Taco Bell, so that because the demand was so high that the employers were taking the students when they get halfway through the program, because they say, enough, right? And we'll train you on the rest. And so, all of this is actually taking the risk out of it. Most of our students, their parents didn't go to college. They didn't take their SATs. The socioeconomic status is not that high. Most of them fully qualify for Pell Grants, which means their family income is in that under $50,000 range. Most of them are dependent, because it's an 18 to 24-year-old right now. And the biggest thing, bar none, that they worry about is this going to work out? Because even $35,000 to become an auto mechanic in 51 weeks is likely one of the biggest investments they've ever made.
Oh, sure.
And so bringing the employers up front to say, hey, don't worry about that. I'm going to start paying them $15 an hour now, $10,000 in tuition reimbursement, and when they're hired at the end, or more, if you go to work for Lithia or Hendricks or Penske, you're talking $25,000 in tuition reimbursement. So you're not worried about any of your student loans at the end of it. That really speaks loudly for taking the risk out of the equation and helps solve that problem we're talking about, which is to get more and more students into these industries.
You made me think of a very quick story, completely unrelated to everything that we're talking about, but I'm going to tell it anyway because you said it earlier. You mentioned Lincoln Electric, which is a massive organization across the world, I think. Did you know that that I think it was started by John C. Lincoln, who is the man who co-founded it, but his son David Lincoln ran it for a number of years and grew it into the monstrosity that it is today. I actually had the pleasure of meeting David Lincoln when he's 92 years old, because he started a graduate university in California called Claremont Lincoln University that I worked at. So I have a picture with David Lincoln right before he died, and I had no idea who he was, and then found out that he had led Lincoln Electric all these years, and how big of a believer. He was a billionaire, by the way. He drove like a really crappy old car in an old briefcase, but billionaire. And it just brought me back to this fact that even those who've created a company and made money, gone to college or not gone to college, believe that we need workers to operate our infrastructure, electric, healthcare, welding. You can't build the planes that we're going to fly on, on the hoverboards that we're going to ride someday. if we don't have people that can put the metal together and put the plastic and do all these bits and pieces. And so then you have people out there like who's the dirty jobs guy? I can't remember his name. Mike Rowe, who always talks about, the critical nature of these blue collar jobs. And you add on the fact that you're talking about that higher ed and its costs continue to go up. And we have this value of conversation, value of higher ed conversation that is now taking place. Is post-secondary education valuable? Maybe it's not if I get a bachelor's degree in history. Maybe it is if I get a certificate in welding. And so people are being presented with very confusing narratives around higher education in general. Yeah. What are students saying? Tell me what your students are saying. Like, I want to work with my hands. I want something that's going to give me money now. Maybe I'll go to school again later. How do students, or maybe you're convincing them to go to college, to go to post-secondary ed because they're just going, I don't know if it's going to work out for me. What's the state of affairs?
Anecdotally, right? I can't speak for the students, but we do a lot of surveying of students. There's really two categories of what we're hearing. Both students, by the way, and parents say is number one. One of the things they say is, I didn't know this was here.
This is lunacy.
Right? I just didn't know any of this was here. That
like physically or like physically there, or the possibility of it.
Yeah, both. And the reason why, by the way, has a lot to do with how high schools are run. Right? Is that we still have hundreds of high schools in the United States that won't let us come in and do career seminars for students because they define themselves by how many of their students go to four-year schools. And therefore, we don't want on our where did our student go board to have them say they went to a trade school. And so that's something that's been breaking down, I think, and that's one of the reasons I like to see the article in Forbes. It was great to work with them on that. In the Wall Street Journal, there was one about our welding students. It's great to see that because it legitimizes and brings to light the notion that this whole thing exists. So that's one of the things that surprised me, was that people like, what? I didn't know any of this stuff was out there. And then number two, I think what students are saying, or there's really three things. Because number two, what students are saying is, I didn't know they paid this much money.
Yeah, that's always a nice shocker for the student.
Yeah, I had an electrician in my backyard. Fixing some lights back there, and I said, "Hey, how much money do you make?" And he said, "I made $325,000 last year." I'm like, "More. That's crazy," and that's great. So how steady and lucrative that the professions are. And again, we don't promise people. This is my C-Cube would be happy for me. We don't promise people they're going to get jobs or how much they're going to make.
Douglas just signed up for your electric.
But it is a steady and more lucrative than people. That's a big surprise. But another thing people say when they come to us is, frankly, I didn't know it would be this hard or this technologically advanced. I like tinkering with like my motorbike or with lawnmower engines, and that's what I kind of thought you were going to be doing there. But the technology has advanced so far that being aligned with the manufacturers keeps us on the forefront. But also, if you think about, one of the biggest reasons a student won't continue on is it's harder than they thought it was going to be, right? Because of, there's a server inside of that car. And answering your question, Doug, is I drive a Mustang Mach-E. It's 2 years old. I got it on purpose because we're transitioning to EV technology in our classrooms, and I didn't know anything about it. Right? And it's cheaper than most of them because I don't like to spend a lot of money on cars. I bought it used.
Sure.
And I love it, by the way. It's a great car. But it's taught me about the transition between my first Pontiac Sunbird that my mom gave me when I was 18 years old. And this server that I get into and drive around Arizona, right? And that transition really has sort of changed the face of how people think about being workers in these tech spaces.
Douglas, any final questions for Jerome?
So what I'm always curious about is what people are reading and thinking about. And so I'll leave it a little bit of an open-ended question, but for kind of our thinking about our education audience, is there something you have read lately or a book you'd recommend to help either understand the students, the sector, or what you guys are going through? And maybe you can just pointing them to the Wall Street Journal article you mentioned. But
well, I've been reading a lot about AI lately. Come on, where's your buzzer?
100%.
Set them up for that one.
And the reason why is it really is transforming every business, right? And so my advice is read as much about it in the sectors that you are to figure out what you're going to do. And AI is a fascinating next frontier, right? Number one, I see it as a significant enabler of what we do, right? AI has revolutionized the way lead generation happens, right? And 6-7 years ago, we would talk to Google and we would say, hey, can you get this in front of all the 18 to 24-year-olds in this market, Houston? And they could figure out how to do that. But now you could say, I want all the 18 to 24-year-olds who didn't take their SATs, whose parents didn't go to college, who went to these 3 high schools, because I just did presentations there.
Artificial intelligence.
And do it between 3 and 6 p.m. And what we're getting out of the intelligence that's been brought into the lead generation process has been extraordinary. The second area has been in terms of what AI is doing for the way we teach students, whether it's being able to be immediate there to answer questions or change our content on the fly in order to be more efficient and more effective. And then the last thing is it's changing the diagnostics and on the of what we're training our students to do. So we have to train them how to use these AI tools, whether they're in the car dealership or fleet service company or the diagnostic tools we're training healthcare workers for. But what AI is not going to do is AI is not going to take blood out of your arm or fix your transmission. And so therefore, the hands-on nature of what we do in those 3 hours a day at the UTI campuses and a little more on the healthcare side is still something that is going to remain in place, but we're going to utilize AI to make it a better experience for everyone.
I like your style, dude.
Sounds like your message is very much this is a complementary technology to what you're doing versus it's not going to take your phlebotomist job. That's for sure.
That's true.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Let me try that again, because we all leave our mistakes in here at the EdUp Experience. I told Jerome I'd be the first one to make a mistake, and that is absolutely true because I can't talk. Let me try that again. Thank you, everyone, for being on this episode. That's what I intended to say, but it came out really funky. Very much appreciated as we talk about career college education. Jerome's going to come back for a quick mini episode just for our subscribers. Douglas, you're welcome to hang out, and I think you're going to want to hear the question that I have. I think it's going to be one of the most important ones that I could ask Jerome. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest co-host, he's Douglas Carlson. He's pretty good on the mic. He's had a lot of experience now, probably around 30 or 40 of these co-hosted episodes. Douglas, always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And ladies and gentlemen, he's Jerome Grant. He is the president and CEO of Universal Technical Institute, UTI. Jerome, it's been an absolute pleasure. We hope you had fun along the way, too.
We did. Douglas, Joe, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Higher education is evolving. And if you're in marketing and enrollment management, then you need to be at the Insights EDU conference.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Insights EDU 2025 is happening February 12 through 14 in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is your chance to explore the latest trends in higher education and discover new and innovative strategies to level up your program marketing and enrollment. Hear from some of the best speakers in the industry, from companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and more. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available.
Hey, everybody. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Did you enjoy that conversation? I hope you did. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early on and ad-free. And you can also hear extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. Did you know that? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com to subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, that's edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.